When we can build a business that's really running well and doing so many great things for people we care about, our employees, our stakeholders, our community, we have a better business to run. It's more enjoyable. And guess what? You're also creating enterprise value.
Welcome to the Insurance Refocused podcast, where we're highlighting real agent stories and how they are innovating to respond to the changes and challenges happening in the independent insurance industry. My name's Lindsay, and I can't wait to introduce you to my amazing co-host, who just so happens to be my mom, Carey Wallace. Mom, how you doing today?
You know, Lindsay, I'm a little bit on the struggle bus today. I'm not going to lie. So we got to do this really fun event last week, kick off the year, see all of our friends, and I got on a plane and my voice stayed in Florida, apparently. Like, I don't know what else to say about it. But other than that, doing great. I'm feeling super accomplished this week. Tell me how you were doing.
I'm doing good. Had a busy day today, catching up from all of the time we spent in person with some of our clients, some of our prospects, some of our partners in Fort Lauderdale. But a lot of my calls today actually centered around the topic that we're going to talk about on today's podcast. So it feels a little bit cathartic to be having this conversation, because I had lots of these conversations today. I think I had like literally 3 calls on how to transition. In our conversations, it was agencies, right? From one generation to the next. And maybe the current owner doesn't want to give up ownership, and current people in the agency are feeling like it is, they're missing things on the table because they can't transition things how they want to. So, man, I am excited for this therapy session that I feel like I'm about to enter. But I'm really excited to introduce our guest, Laurie Barkman. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. This is so exciting. I love being with both of you, and that you are mother-daughter. So maybe I'll put both of you in the hot seat. I don't know.
Hey, man, this is an open forum. You can do whatever you would like. I love it. I love it.
You know, Laurie, we've talked multiple times on our podcast about how our business was built around my mom, Carey, right? And a lot of our clients know her, love her, trust her, right? She is the go-to person. And we have a lot of similar challenges to our clients that, you know, the owner is the main salesperson and they are the go-to person. And that really makes a lot of companies struggle. So I think some of the topics that we might talk about, not that I'm ready for my mom to move on, but it's a hard thing sometimes when you have these founder-led businesses to get to the next stage when you're blocked up in calls all day.
You know, it's such a relatable topic, and it was interesting to hear you say how you just had 3 calls today that this came up. I think everybody listening is going to learn a lot from our conversation, and it's human nature. 100% of us are going to leave our business one day, right? 100% of us, it's going to happen. And so are we going to be thoughtful about it and intentional about how we transition our business, or are we not? We're just going to leave it to hope, because hope's not a strategy. So I really appreciate you inviting me on the show.
Yeah, Laurie. So I often say in my work, I want to change 2 things. I want to have everybody have a perpetuation plan and be thoughtful about it, because I think we build these businesses, they're valuable. And how sad is it that it sells at a discount because we didn't plan? Like, that's the worst thing that could happen. The second thing in our world, retention is, or repeatable income is what causes the value inside our agency, but we don't understand what drives our retention. So those 2 things are like my plight in life, is to figure out a way to get everybody to do that. So if you were going to give agency owners, business owners, whomever, advice of when to start a plan, what would you say?
Well, the best time to start planning was yesterday, and the next best is today. I'm kind of using an ancient proverb here to that example. But the reality is, too, a lot of people don't think about this until the end. And then at that time, we've run out of time, we've run out of options. So when we can build a business that's really running well and doing so many great things for our people we care about, our employees, our stakeholders, our community, we have a better business to run. It's more enjoyable. And guess what? You're also creating enterprise value. So if we're creating an attractive business, one that's transferable, and one day that a buyer might want to own, why would we wait for that? Why are we waiting for that? Right. And that is the giant misnomer I want to address, which is I don't talk about exit planning. I talk about transition planning. I talk about growth. I talk about value growth and transition. And exit is a moment in time. I exited the door. Oh, okay. As opposed to I grew my business. I transitioned my business. Well, how long did it take? Well, about 30 years. Okay, cool. Right. It is not overnight. We just don't do this overnight. And so if directionally we see this happening and we say, well, how much time? I would say, look, if you kind of want to be realistic about it, 5 to 7 years is probably a way to go. But I'm really not kidding when I say, why would we want to wait? So of the things that we should be working on today, what are the things that are detracting value? What are the things that could add value? And how we prioritize those and work on those over time.
So I oftentimes, listen, there's a reason why so many people don't have a perpetuation plan. There truly is. Because oftentimes it feels overwhelming. It feels like you take one step and you've got 100 more steps to go. And then you take one more step and oh my goodness, now it's 200 more steps. Like it feels like an overwhelming task. And sometimes it's easier to put your head down and just keep working. So tell me and if I'm nowhere near the end of my career, I don't think you're anywhere near the end of your career, but we should be thinking about it. Like we are leaders in our organization and therefore it should be us driving that plan. What advice would you give someone to take the bite at the apple and how to approach this in a thoughtful, but also a way that gives you great progress?
I think a great place to begin is look inward, right? And really as an owner or as a founder, someone who's acquired a business, you're owning the business. So if you're the business owner, however you came into being that owner, this applies to you. What's your vision and what's going to make you happy? For some people, it's about dying at their desk and we are never going to get them to do anything. They are the ultimate can kickers and we're not going to convince them otherwise. For everybody else who goes, I don't want that to happen to me. I want to be more in control. Then I think there's some things that we can do to really make sure we have a good, healthy business. In your industry of insurance, you're very, very fortunate to have the business model of recurring revenue. I mean, full stop, right? That's a very enviable position. And you're right, it is all about retention and churn and customer acquisition costs and so on. But if there's other things that we can look at to say, well, what makes a business healthy and what should we be looking for in general, the first place we're going to look is our financials. And do we have consistent way to look at our financials? You wouldn't believe how many messy books there are out there. Either no books at all or messy books.
I very much believe that. Yes,
inconsistent chart of accounts. Oh, so-and-so bookkeeper left and then so-and-so came in and how they do it is different. And then when we go to look at the business year to year, it's a total disaster. We can't get anything consistent. We want to look for patterns. We want to look for trends. We want to see where there might be, if we're doing valuations, we might look for add backs and things of that nature. Another thing related to financial results is not only the results, of course, we want to see a profitable, healthy business. Are you punching above your weight in your industry? Or are you trending towards best in class? Are you just treading water? Or are you kind of below? So I think knowing where you sit in your industry is really important. And what's nice about your industry is I'm sure there's tons of benchmarks. And so it's not about the 100 benchmarks. It's kind of like, what are the really important ones? And I think you've honed in on a few of those. As far as other aspects of financial, I think there's another thing for some companies that, it's pretty affordable option and not a lot of companies know about it. So everybody's sort of heard of audited financials and it sounds scary and expensive and it takes a lot of time. Maybe it's not scary. I don't mean to say that, but it takes a lot of time and it's expensive. True. Yes. Okay. So it's not for all firms, but there is an option that's a little lower cost and less time. And so that's less time is really the function here. And it's called reviewed financials. And so for companies, when they get to a size of whatever that size is, they might say, yeah, I just want to have some third party eyes on it. And if you ask your accounting firm to take a look at your books and do reviewed financials while they're doing your taxes, it really shouldn't be a huge price tag. And that could be, again, a step towards in this bucket of financial results and financial, where you sit in your industry, the industry you're serving, all those things is a measure, part of the measures of the 8 things. Okay. I didn't give you all 8, but I gave you one, which is financial. There's a ton of stuff just under financial, right? I'm just scratching the surface here. But just to give the audience a flavor of where's the one place to start, it's financials.
Yeah, I think if you understand the health of your business, it's going to lead you to the other places where you need to go. But I wasn't joking. Like our business started by doing valuations for the middle of the market to the lower end of the market of our industry. And it's almost like financials are the last things on people's minds. They're just trying to sell and serve their clients and do their thing. And they don't have a background in finance. They don't have an accounting degree. Like numbers aren't their thing. So it's almost like it's forgotten until they need it. And then it can really slow them down when they want to buy an agency, when they want to add a team member, when they want to expand, et cetera. And certainly when they want to exit. So I couldn't agree with you more. What about the fact that many owners are what I would call the linchpin in their organization? Like how, and it's hard not to be. So what would you say to someone that is the case? How do you start peeling away and creating the transferability that's necessary to have value in your agency or in your business? Sorry, I keep saying agency. My goodness.
For any business owner, it's important to look in the mirror and ask yourself, why do we have the owner dependencies that we have? If we don't see them, okay, we need to start there. If there's somebody telling us that we are the bottleneck, or we inherently know we're the bottleneck, or we haven't taken a vacation and truly unplugged in like ever. When's the last time you took a vacation? Okay. Well, when you were on vacation, did you literally unplug? Most people cannot answer yes to that question. And so what are some of the signals and signs that you have owner dependencies? Are you the only person in your manufacturing firm that knows just where to kick that one machine? Right. And if that's a signal, what are you going to do about it? Other things like product design, product delivery, all of those things can point to you as the business owner. And so people are dependent on you to make decisions. You haven't delegated. You're the only signatory. Maybe, that's a problem with contract signing, whatever it is. So the most common that we see are either client service delivery, like you mentioned, like people love working with you. And I'm sure you and your daughter have had that transition, and I love to talk to you about it. But also the other one is sales. So the other measure of looking in the mirror, if everybody's kind of going, wait a minute, I got to check in on this. What is the measure? Well, are you personally as the owner delivering more than 40% of your firm's total revenue? If you said yes,
it's a really good question.
You got to check in on that one, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, if we can look at sales or we can look at customer delivery, now we can start to peel back the onion, right? So let's just take sales for a second. Okay. So let's go through the sales process. Are you going on sales calls by yourself? Or do you always have someone with you? Right? Like once we know what the problem is or where the opportunity, if we want to look at the glass half full, where's the opportunity and what can we do differently?
Yeah, it's a huge one that we see both with our clients and reflected in our business, right? So background on Agency Focus for you. The company's been around for 4 years. 4 years? 5 years. We just hit a birthday. 5 official years.
Happy birthday. Woo-woo.
My mom is the founder and the one who runs the company. And I just joined 1 year ago. So I just had my 1 year anniversary with Agency Focus. I've been in and out, not in and out like actual, employership, but I've done various projects just because she's my mom. And the sales part is what we've been working on transitioning the most in our business, mostly because I'm not a financial background. And that's kind of important when you're delivering valuation and fractional CFO.
Yeah, little kind of important, Linz. Yeah.
Little bit. Yeah. But 100%. I also wanted to ask you though, because one of the things we do see with some of our clients is heavy reliance, not just on the owner, but on like one key person in the agency, right? And sometimes that's not the owner. Maybe it's an office manager or a key producer. What do you do in those situations when it's not the owner and they don't think like a business owner in those types of situations?
Well, one of the things I like to do with clients, I work a lot with business owners and professional services, environments where our people are the product. If we, the owner, have outlined key roles and responsibilities, and then we've delegated to a person, whether it's an office manager or whether it's a COO, maybe one way to think about kind of the org chart / general roles and responsibilities is we do have a visionary, right? We need a visionary in the company. And most typically that's the founder, that's the CEO. They're looking at strategy, they're thinking ahead, they're looking at the big picture, and they ultimately have P&L responsibility. And then we might have somebody that is somebody we'd call an integrator, somebody who really good at kind of process controls and making sure all the oars in the water are moving at the same rate, the same pace. And, people in the right seats, are they even on the right bus, right? And that integrator role is really, really important. So in the beginning, when we're getting our firm up and running, we are both. We are the visionary and we are the integrator. And then over time, as our business grows, we need to hire, I love to call it a 2IC, a second in command. And so if we are the visionary and we need somebody to balance us out, then we should be hiring an integrator. There's a lot of visionary people that are just terrible integrators.
Heck
They
yeah,
just
I
don't
totally
care
agree.
about the detail. The integrators love detail and they don't want to be in the spotlight. So it's a great combination. And then we have all the other roles and responsibilities that we can fill out functionally, right? In any organization, you might have the sales and marketing and operations and so on and so on. So I think for, a second in command, or if it's an office manager, look, anybody can be a bottleneck and be a problem, or they can be part of the solution. So it really depends on the situation of how I could answer your question. But I just wanted to introduce that concept of, yes, there are different roles and responsibilities. We need to have people that either make our strength stronger or balance us out another way. If you don't have a 2IC or you don't have a second in command that can really balance you out or enhance where you are and enable you, free you up, maybe they have the skills you have, which frees you up to go do other things. There's a woman that I had on my show. It's called Succession Stories. And so shocker of shockers, right? We're talking about succession. But like I said, I work with a lot of business owners. And so I see it all the time where people say, well, I want to have somebody who balances me out. If I have my skills or this, I want their skills to be that. There's nothing wrong with that. But what she said really, I thought was really cool, which was, well, I know I'm really good at sales and marketing. Therefore, I wanted to hire somebody who was better than me at sales and marketing. So I didn't do it anymore. I wanted them to replace me. And she was very mindful about that. I thought, that's great. I hadn't heard anybody talk about that before.
It's so funny. I had someone say to me once, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. And I think we all have to think about what is your highest and best. Had an incredible mentor in my career that used to really challenge you to say, are you really doing your highest and best? And if you're not, what can get you to spend more time on your highest and best rather than things that are easy or whatever? One of the things you just said, though, is, you asked, are you going on sales calls alone? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? And you have to change your mindset because many times in a small organization, you might feel like that's redundant when in fact, it's actually essential for someone else to hear, listen, absorb, and be able to continue your brand, continue your approach without you in the room. It's impossible to learn that if you never expose people, but it could feel like I'm wasting resources by having two people here when it could really be done by one, right? But you'll never scale without it. It's the craziest concept, but I love that you're reminding us if you teach other people to do things, then you are freed up to do your highest and best, which is where we want to achieve, right?
Absolutely. And there's an exercise I love doing with clients. I call it the skill fun box, but essentially it's a 2x2. And if you think about your mood elevator, how do you feel
right
when you're working on this or that? Are you down in the pits or are you up high? And so how you feel about it is one dimension. And then are you good at it or not good at it? Look, if you suck at something, you're not going to want to do it, right? Now, the other flip of that is, look, I'm really good at it, but I don't want to do this. So if we spend time on this little skill fun box, I love this exercise because it's very, very obvious where things land and what we should be keep killing or changing.
Yeah. So give me an idea of how you coach and work with owners that maybe feel like I'm just not ready. I'm not at that point, but as an outsider looking in, that if you don't do something, you might actually change the number of options that you have, right? Like if you're not preparing now, when something happens, you're not ready. So how do you get agents, or how do you get the owners that you work with to understand that concept?
A lot of owners feel like they're trapped right now. They're kind of in their head and they're just ideas are swirling. They don't know what to do with them. They feel like they're stagnating, or they're really stressed, or they're having some bad relationships at work or at home, or both. And so they're kind of ready for that point where they're reaching like, I got to get this right. I got to get my business right. I got to get me right. And then they do have that 5 to 7 year time horizon. So these are kind of our Gen X owners. I'm a Gen Xer, and I relate to that generation very, very well. I've worked so much with boomers. I've worked a ton with boomers, and I can tell you the Gen Xers are looking at the boomers going, I don't want to do what they're doing. I want to do it differently and better. So what we've done is created what we call the BUILT method, which is a way to think about, the approach of this, and then how we serve them. I'll answer that question as well. And it kind of makes sense because it all goes together. So the BUILT method is an acronym, right? BUILT stands for a blueprint. And for folks that we work with, a lot of engineering, scientific, technology companies, it just makes sense. These are analytical folks who like to have a roadmap. So you got to have a roadmap for your vision and where your firm's going, because if you don't know, how are you going to get there? I have a client that's a construction services client. He's in his 60s, and I don't think he's ever really sat down and did a 5-year financial plan. Well, we banged one out the other day, and he was like, wow, this is really game changing, because not only were we looking at a growth forecast, we were tying it to value. So that's the U, which is unlock. So if we can say, hey, this is where we want to go. How do we want to get there? What do we need to unlock, whether it's operational, or some of the growth levers? How do we unlock our potential so that we can get to where we need to be? And then the I stands for integrate, right? So we have systems, we have processes, we have things we got to put together, and we can't ignore those things, because again, as we scale, it can't be all on one person. It has to be the team doing it. And the more systematized, the more we can be documenting things. We can bring others into the organization. We're not so beholden upon one person with their Post-it notes, because what happens when they either they quit or they pass away. And we've all seen that happen, unfortunately.
Sure. Yeah.
The L stands for lead, right? Leadership, and leading with clarity, not chaos. Like I said earlier, hope is not a strategy. We need to be clear. We need to have goals. We need to know where we're headed, and we need to be able to what I like to call reverse engineering. So if we know where we're headed, we got to reverse engineer to get there. And that leads us to the T, which is for transition, one of my favorite words. And so how do we transition with control, with confidence, so that we know where we're headed? So if you take this BUILT methodology, the way we bring it to the world, the way we bring it to clients, is with what we call our BUILT leader circles. They're a small cohort of people. It's an application process. We don't take everybody. We want to make sure everybody's really going to benefit from the process. But it means that we are in a small group of peers. These are CEOs and business owners who appreciate structure, a structured approach, who want to get into the numbers and want data, and they don't want to just be guessing. And we facilitate the groups. It's not just like a mastermind where people show up and start venting and complaining and yada, yada. No, we're actually going to do work, and you're going to have homework. And then my role is to hold you accountable, because I'm the Sherpa, right? That's part of what we do, is we're with you on your journey. And so the leader circles are a great way to do that. We also offer other resources like courses and stuff that people can take on their own time. And with our leader circle, we build all that in. So they're getting a very robust learning platform in addition to facilitated sessions. And then we also offer private client work. So there's some clients that just need that one-on-one. They want the VIP, the hot seat every time they meet with me. And so we work with clients that way too.
Yeah, I think it's great to have a structure, but I like that you acknowledge that this journey is not the same for everyone. There is lots of twists and turns, and you have to be really personalized in the approach that I guess, shepherd someone through this process, because, everybody charts their own journey. They might start their business at a different point in their life. And the idea is to be able to pull yourself out of your business for a second and think about the future rather than just being deep in your business, right? So I love that you have a process for that. So what's the top 3 pieces of advice to someone who's listening, who runs a business, and you're like, man, you're talking about me. Like, where do I even start? What should I do? What are the top 3 things you would advise them?
Well, I think the obvious one was already mentioned, so it's probably worth underscoring, which is check in on your financials. If you don't have a sense of your balance sheet, maybe you're carrying some debt that it's just heavy, weighing things down, and you have a lot of debt service. What are ways to clean up your balance sheet? What are ways to get a real handle on cost to serve? So service businesses, we might have COGS if we have products that we're licensing or software and things of that nature. But many, many times service businesses, our cost is our people. So we don't always understand the cost to serve, or we should be looking at that. And so gross margin, gross profit, in these businesses is immeasurable. For some companies that have billable time and they're not tracking their employees' time, that's their inventory. And so maybe they're not, if you think of wholesale retail pricing, we're probably not charging enough. And so then those companies are going to be underwater and they don't know why. So I think just having a really good handle on what some of the fundamentals are and what are some of the levers you can pull for more scalable growth, that's kind of easier said than done. I get that, but it's a one place to really start and just dig in and make sure you know what is making your company tick. And the second category I would check in on is your competitive advantages. If it's easy to articulate what sets your company apart, if you have a competitive moat that's sort of giving you a protection, maybe you have some IP advantage, maybe you have some relationships that are really important in the industry. The other flip of the coin, and there's two sides to every pancake. I love that saying. So the flip of the pancake is that, yeah, it could be the opportunity, but it could also represent risk. So what would be an example? Well, let's say we have these wonderful client relationships, but Carey, they've been a handshake deal with you for years. Well, all of a sudden now Lindsay's in the chair and you've retired, or God forbid something else has happened to you. And those are unpapered, right? It was a handshake deal. And now they're not going to continue with you. Wow. And let's say that was also 20% of your revenue out the door. How many of us have encountered that where all of a sudden the relationship is severed and we're shocked by that? Well, we shouldn't be shocked by that. So what am I saying? I'm saying that in general, while we're looking to grow value, we also need to protect value.
Sure.
So the third thing is to check in on the things that could derail your business. And what can we do to not only grow value, but protect value? So for example, you're an insurance business. I'm sure you'll love to hear me say this. Do we have the umbrella policy that that we as individual business owner, not the company owning it, the company needs their umbrella policy too, but just as a small check-in, do we have up to 3 million or 5 million of our own, right? Like just some stuff like that. Another example of back to the employee question, we talked about employees that are really valuable in the business.
Sure.
Okay. So what have we done to retain these employees besides being great managers and supervisors, and they love our culture? Okay, that's hard, right? I was kind of saying that facetiously, but yes, do that first. Be a good place to work. Be a good person to work with, and respect your people and all that, and then pay them well and show value. Okay, cool. Now, well, beyond that, if you have some really key employees and you haven't created a retaining methodology, and we could talk about a number of things of what you might do, look at the risks. What happens if they leave your business? So, and then we could talk about, well, what are those things that could help retain some of our key people? So retain and reward kind of go together. Recognition. It's not just comp. We all know that. So those would be the 3.
It's funny that you mentioned, looking at retaining the key people, because if we think about the value of a business, it's not just the owner, it's all the relationships inside the business. And one of the key things for us is if your staff doesn't stay through a transition, the value of your business could be greatly different on the other side of that transition. And it's not just the owner. Hopefully the owners work themselves into that visionary role where they're not super in the day to day, but it's those key people, and will they stay with you? So is there a pathway to ownership? Is there an incentive program? Is there something, anything? It'll look and feel different based on the people that you employ, but getting to know your people and knowing what motivates them and that they're part of something bigger than themselves is really important. So in our particular industry, that's not a well-defined thing as it is in things like an accounting firm or a law firm. Like there's a clear pathway, and everybody knows what the pathway is. You know that you need to buy in, et cetera. That doesn't really exist in our industry. And it's unfortunate because we're an aging, and I don't know if you knew this, but not a lot of people think insurance is a really exciting place to work. So we're not attracting a lot of young people, which is interesting. So really key that you said that that's something you should think about, because it gets overlooked. And unfortunately, you look around and potentially you could really hurt the value of your agency or of your business or your ability to transfer the way in which you wanted to, because you've not paid attention to that part.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to mention one more
Please
check-in. If you're watching this video, you'll see that there's a book cover over my shoulder, and that is the book that I wrote called the Business Transition Handbook. So you might wonder, well, what is in that book? And there's lots of things in this book. But essentially, it's kind of a roadmap for what are the things that we should be working on and thinking on. And one of my favorite chapters is on this topic, which is who should own your business after you. And I just love this. I don't want everybody to just read chapter 6. I want you to start with chapter 1. But that said, because I start you out in a thought process. But anyway, as we jump ahead to chapter 6, who should own your business after you? I think there's a giant issue with professional services firms that are where the owner is really hopeful and believing, for whatever reason, that they may have their next owner in their four walls already. Maybe they think that Junior, in this case, Lindsay, yes, I'm looking at you. Maybe they think that Junior wants to be part of the business. Maybe Junior has said they want to be. But what if Junior's really not qualified? Okay, well, what do we need to work on with that? Or a flip side of, well, we've hired this wonderful manager, and over time, this wonderful manager is a wonderful manager. Does that wonderful manager have what it takes to be an owner? You didn't hire that person to be an owner. You hired them to be a manager. And there's a big difference between being a manager and being an owner, right? And we all have seen that. Some folks have an owner mentality and some people don't. So how do we check in on that? And I am fascinated by this because I've seen owners get tripped up by it. So for example, I do M&A work, right? So I talk with a lot of people who are like, they'll call and they're typically the baby boomers. They'll call me and they'll say, well, I want to sell my company in the next year. Okay. So we ask questions and we try to understand, where are they today? Well, one engineering firm said, I thought I was going to sell my business to my second in command. And not only did they not want to buy the business from me, they actually quit. And he was so hurt by that. He was really hurt by that. Now, I don't know all the conversations that transpired, but I can probably guess that there was a lot of assumptions happening, and one way or the other all around. And it just reached a point where it just wasn't meant to be. But unfortunately, it took too long for all that to happen. And then the owner was left standing there with an open bag going, wait a minute, what am I doing here? Mm-hmm. And it was disappointing. I think that there's other examples. Sometimes it's health related, which is sad, but we're facing death or illness or something of that nature. And we think someone internally is going to take it over and run it. And so we haven't planned for that. And that's more of contingency. So what I'm talking about is not the bus. Okay. We should have a bus book, which is what happens if, and right. Yes, that should happen, but that's maybe an interim thing. I'm talking about the more proactive thing. And whether it's family, whether it's, whether it's a manager or somebody that's a insider, we call those related parties. They're not really blood related, but it's more like the insider nature of it as opposed to a strategic buyer or a financial buyer. And I think there's something really, really interesting to explore in assessing whether or not our people might be a fit for ownership or maybe not.
Yeah. I think it's a really important, and you should probably underscore, just because someone is a great salesperson doesn't make them an owner. Just because someone's a great manager does not make them an owner. Just because someone has the right last name does not make them an owner. That's the reality, right? So I love that. I would encourage everyone to get the book, read the book, get informed. I don't know what you know about our industry, but there's somewhere around 70% of small independent insurance agencies have multi-generational. So it's a real thing. It's something to think about. And in order to make sure that your business can continue into perpetuity, you have to be thinking about these things. Laurie, I could talk to you for hours about this. Obviously, we share many of the same passions without questions. But in closing, I'd like for our listeners, if they want to reach out to you and they want to get in touch with you, how would they go about finding you?
Well, a great place is it's my name and my website, lauriebarkman.me. And on that site, I've got all the resources linked to my book, a link to my course, the link to the leader circles. They can find it all there. They can join the mailing list, big orange button. I'm wearing an orange shirt, so you can't miss it. There's a big orange button to join the mailing list. So I'd love that. But I also wanted to offer an opportunity as a gift to your audience. If they are interested in kind of taking a look at their managers or family and thinking ahead for the future, is my next owner already on my team? We've created an assessment for that, and it would be cool if they want to check it out, and they can take it multiple times. So let's say they want to do it for Bobby and they want to do it for James and whoever for Susan. Great. Go ahead and do that. And that URL is btsherpa.com/succession.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being our guest today, Laurie. I hope we see you in the future.
Oh, absolutely. I really appreciate coming on. Thanks so much for having me.
Got it. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Insurance Refocused podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a review so you'll never miss us. Want to learn more about how Agency Focus can help you grow your agency? Head to agency-focus.com or email Carey directly at carey@agency-focus.com. If you need to get in touch with me, feel free to shoot me an email at lindsay@agency-focus.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.